Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Wiki Weekends. I am your host Lucas Holland and I am joined as always by the lovely Karl Smallwood.
Hello. That was very George Takei, I'm sorry. Getting very George Takei on you, like, hello.
People, may or may not notice when we record these that we tend to, record them in, a little bit of, bulk for the week or whatever.
You're saying we do them all on the same day.
Shh, don't let anyone know, but, I'm just letting people know. I know I'm a bit under the weather. I know I'm a bit stuffy. I apologise, but, we're powering through, and we want to make content for you all, and, at least I'm definitely a lot better off than the people in the subject that I've brought today, Karl.
And what is that?
Well, Karl, of course we're continuing with spooky season, and I'm talking about the film Final Destination.
Okay, so I love the Final Destination movies.
Mm-hmm.
As people probably know, I love horror movies. I love, especially horror movies with a gimmick.
Right, yeah.
And the gimmick of the Final Destination movies of just death being a petty asshole is so good.
I really like the gimmick, and I've mentioned multiple times this month, I'm not really into horror stuff, but Final Destination's one of those where I don't really see it as much of, horror necessarily as, kind of a cool concept with, thriller elements and horror elements in there.
I'd say it's not horror as much as it is, thriller. There's gore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the gore is, quite simple. Yeah.
Sometimes I kind of look away from, the conventions of the death methods and stuff like that. I can't quite always stomach that.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably a paranormal thriller. How does Wikipedia describe Final Destination?
It says that Final Destination is a 2000 American supernatural horror film directed by James Wong, and then a screenplay written by Wong, Glenn Morgan, and Jeffrey Reddick, based on a story by Reddick. And yeah, a supernatural horror film, I guess, but again, it doesn't feel very horror to me.
I'd say it's close to thriller.
Mm-hmm. I really like the concept, as I should say, just death being a petty asshole. And if people don't really know, the basic idea of the plot, we'll get a bit further into it later, but the basic idea is that a few people cheat death.
Yes.
And that they were meant to die in a catastrophe, but someone had a premonition, got people out of the accident, and now death is no, fuck you, you were meant to die.
Yeah, it's like a glitch in the universe, deja vu or something like that, where you just, for some weird confluence of events, you accidentally cheat a death, and they say death once you've been, you are marked to die, but death once it's solved. And one of the reasons I love death as a concept in the Final Destination movies is you never see death. It's you see wisp, you see wind going through a window, but the idea, it's people often wonder, well, why would death want to kill them in convoluted ways? It's well, imagine an entity like death. It has existed since the dawn of time. It is this ageless, amorphous entity that is beyond our comprehension. Why would it not go for the style points?
Yeah,
that's basically what it's doing. Death's. Do you know when you're playing Hitman? And you play the level, and you see people speedrunning Hitman, and they just throw hand grenades through windows and stuff like that. It's well, why would you not do it in the coolest possible way? Basically, death's it's going for style points.
And I do appreciate, as I say, I'm not great with the gore part, but I do appreciate some of the build up where it's almost Rube Goldberg-esque in the machinations that death comes up with to kill them.
And one thing I've always appreciated about the series is the filmmaking. It's those moments where they're doing the setups for the machines are really cool. I think the one everyone always singles out is the one on the balance beam, which is which is the one where it's that's the tensest one because it's where there's a thumbtack on a balance beam and she's doing a full gymnastics routine. And it's just one of those things of like, you're just on the edge of your seat, like, oh no, because she keeps nearly putting her foot on it.
The one I remember quite well is when they're in the gym and you see like all the gym equipment like rattling and just slowly getting more and more insecure. And it's like, oh no, when's it all going to happen?
Lewis ain't afraid no death. Fuck death. Death is a fucking different fan. Death wear blue and orange. Real man? We're black. Lewis ain't afraid no death. Death's afraid of me. Death fears me.
And then because they know that, they sometimes play against your expectations, where they'll do like they'll have the accident and like, oh thank God I'm okay, and then just like a car will come from off screen, which is it's somehow it's unsatisfying, but it fits with the theme of death having a sense of humour, of giving people a little bit of hope to think they've survived, and then killing them.
Yeah, we are talking specifically about the first Final Destination film today.
Which I believe, it's a fun fact to know about this, it started life as an X-Files script.
It does mention this in the next paragraph.
Does it mention that it was meant... Thing is, though, this is too... Do you know one of those things where you look at it and go, this should be a movie? This concept is too good for an episode of the X-Files.
Yeah, we'll get on to that in a second, but the first installment in the Final Destination film series stars Devon Sawa, Ali Larter, Kerr Smith, and Tony Todd.
And who is just a really good horror actor, and he is best known as the Candyman.
I think Tony Todd is playing Venom in the Marvel Spider-Man 2 that's just coming out.
Oh, yeah, because he's a really good voice actor as well. Like, he has that... You hear his voice in that movie, where he's explaining death, of like, death wants its soul.
Because I was like, Tony Todd, I remember seeing that name recently, and it's like, yeah, he's playing Venom in the new game. But yeah, Sawa portrays a teenager who cheats death after having a premonition of a catastrophic plane explosion. He and several of his classmates leave the plane before the explosion occurs, but death later takes the lives of those who were meant to die on the plane.
Here's the thing as well, of like all these Final Destination movies, like the Saw movies, but I think they're better than the Saw movies because there's at least some craft to making them. Each one starts like a big accident. And I don't think they've ever topped the second one.
Which one's the second one?
It's the one where the truck carrying the logs. To this day, people who drive, I think there's a great Reddit thread where they ask people like,
drive behind one of them.
People who drive those trucks after the Final Destination movie came out. Did you notice? It's like they say like, no one's driven behind me in 20 years. Like, that's it. To this day, people are still scared of that visual.
That really sticks out to me. Like I remember that one a lot. And then
everyone
obviously
does,
I think number 3 as well is the roller coaster, right?
I think 3 is the roller coaster. I think 4 is the NASCAR track, and 5 is I forget. Like they all kind of blend into one, but they're all.
Yeah, I think I've only seen the first 3.
The 5th one's worth a watch. The 5th one's really fun because it was filmed in 3D. But it's one of those movies where it was really good 3D, Joe. They actually gave a shit.
It wasn't just one of those like post-production, just fuck it.
Some of it is, but I think the best experience I've ever had watching 3D, besides Jackass 3D, because that's just amazing, is the opening trailer or the opening like cutscene, and the end of it is it's names on glass, and then the glass shatters as objects fly through it in 3D.
All right, yeah.
And the way they filmed that is they got giant panes of glass. Painted like people's actual credits on them and dropped like sledgehammers through them while filming with phantom cams.
Yeah.
And just the credits to that movie are one of the best things I've ever seen in 3D. And that's the credits.
I haven't seen them in 3D, but I have seen like clips of that. And
that
I was
glass smashing, behind the scenes,
really
it's so fun. Same with all like the traps, all the Rube Goldberg. A lot of that was practical effects.
Yeah, you can tell because like it just. A lot of it looks really good and holds up really well. Like, obviously, not all of it does.
Not the goal.
But, yeah, a lot of it, considering it's, like, from 2000 or, like, early 2000s, depending on the movie. But, yeah, they hold up relatively well. But it does say here, the film began as a spec script written by Reddick for an episode of The X-Files, which we talked about not long ago.
Oh, it's too strong. It's too good an idea. It's a crime we've only got 5 of these movies, but we've had 10 Saw movies.
Like that's the thing is like we'll talk about them soon, you know.
Okay. Yeah. Spoilers.
Like spoilers, but I've just recently watched Saw 1 and 2 for the first time, and like if only they kept along like that path of Saw 1 and 2 of like they're genuinely pretty good, and then I've heard it just like slowly just dies off.
Lucas, there's a part in the 5th movie where Saw, like Tobin Bell, legit says almost to camera, "I've never killed anyone." After the 2nd movie where like 15 like police officers die at once because of a shotgun.
Let me tell you, those first 2 movies I've clocked up a vast number of Jigsaw actual murders.
Lucas, he's never killed anyone.
Never killed anyone.
They always had a chance.
But yeah, it's interesting that it was written by Reddit in order for Reddit to get a TV agent. Like that's so interesting. Of like this person that needed to get a TV agent ended up coming up with the concept for Final Destination.
Like it's such an interesting concept. As I said, and the films are so fun visually. Mm-hmm. Visually, the movies are so like you said, those like Rube Goldberg-esque accidents of like all the things and like just. And like I said, a lot of it's done practically. Like they built giant. I think for this one, it's the plane one, right?
The plane crash. Yeah.
I think they built like an almost full size like set of a plane. They shook around with the actors in it and stuff. Like,
right. Yeah. Because I was wondering how they managed to get that look quite as impressive as it is. Because like you see an entire like portion of a plane rip off and everything. Yeah.
I will say, if anyone's like not a big fan of horror, but they like the way movies are made, go watch, if you can track them down, the behind the scenes of making ofs of these movies. It's
like it's one of those of again, I really struggle with a lot of horror, and like, I genuinely don't watch them, and like even as say I've just watched all 1 and 2, I'm not watching anymore because I heard they just get like too much gore and torture porn-esque, and I'm just like I'm leaving it there. The 2 decent ones, and I'm just like, you know what? I have a good time-ish with Final Destination. I still find the concept haunts me a little bit of like the idea that death will maliciously hunt you down if you cheat death. But like it feels more like thriller than horror to me.
Yeah, and one of the things that I like about it is that even like in the first ones, like there's elements of humor. Like they say, death has a sense of humor. Mm-hmm. And that's what they mean by that. It's like people tend to die in ironic ways. Like I think the first guy's like he just drowns, he gets hung in the shower or something like that. Like some of them are pretty basic.
God. Yeah.
Then you have like the guy who's a racist and he's driving behind someone to like racially abuse them, and he gets dragged behind his own car while he's set on fire after trying to put a burning cross on their lawn.
Oh fuck.
Yeah, right. It's one of those things where, like, the racist gets his comeuppance by dying in a very ironic way, because that's the kind of thing people do when they were lynching black people in the past. And it's like, that's, again, death is going for style points.
It says here that like the film became a financial success, making $10 million on its opening weekend. But it also says it received negative reviews from critics. Again, I haven't watched the movie in a little while, but I have good memories of it.
I don't know how you'd give it a bad review, because it's such an interesting premise for a horror movie, and that's the only thing you really want. It's like the effects are really good, the acting's, passable.
For a horror movie, yeah.
For a horror movie, yeah, but it's like, it's so visually distinct as a series. Like, it has that really good, like, just the opening 5 minutes of that movie, the plane crash, is one of the most harrowing things.
And I think it's just one of the most interesting premises that I've heard of for a horror franchise.
Yeah, well, it's fun. And it's weird to say that about me, where a bunch of people, but it's fun.
It says here, like, it was praised for generating a respectable amount of suspense, playful and energized enough to keep an audience guessing, an unexpectedly alert teen screen disaster chiller, and also Sauer's performance. But it was criticized as dramatically flat and aimed at the teen dating crowd. I'm like, I guess it was like a teen movie because it starred a lot of teens, but like,
I've never understood that criticism. It's like, it's a movie for teenagers. It's like, teenagers buy movie tickets, right?
Yeah.
I'm really confused by that.
Yeah, I am too. It's like,
because I just remember it being like just such a fun romp, and it's like, it's the start of this franchise that has, to my knowledge, been generally well received.
Yeah, I don't not massively critical success, but like I genuinely has always thought like people were relatively okay with those movies. Like, especially considering like you look at the horror genre, a lot of the horror genres like rated quite poorly anyway.
Do you know what that is? Yeah, there's I think it's Jay Bauman of Red Letter Media talks about this, of like critics are so scared to give horror movies good reviews because they think they're not worthy of that, and it's like they always splice in like Roger Ebert, like I think he's the first critic to win like a Pulitzer for criticism, just shitting on the Friday the 13th movies. Like he literally doxed one of the directors live on air. He gave out the address of the director, saying, if you've got a problem with this movie, why don't you write to the director and tell them?
There's still a massive element of kind of elitism within a lot of the film industry and a lot of Hollywood. And, you see a lot of quote-unquote Oscar bait movies. And kind of, there's a lot of those movies that I've watched over the years where, they are critically enamored and they get nominated for bunch of awards and stuff, and I watch them and I'm like, but I'm not finding it interesting. Like, there's a 7 out of 10 that I've had a much better time with.
Do you know one of the things as well that I think is real? It's one of the things, once you notice it, you can never unnotice it. And it's like so many like best pictures and like Oscar winning best picture movies are about Hollywood or making movies.
Yeah, like for one of the most recent examples, La La Land.
La La Land, The Artist.
Yeah.
Argo.
Look at just how many awards they get nominated for.
And it's like, it's basically just that meme Joe Obama giving himself the medal.
Yeah. It's one that I noticed with both, like, I guess a bit of both that and kind of just appeasing directors and saying, like, always giving them their flowers, was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And I was like, it was a film that was well acted and well shot, but I came away with like nothing out of it. But that received like so many nominations for awards, and like people bigged it up so much, and I was like, it was a very, as I say, well constructed movie, or well-made movie, I should say, that nothing happens in it.
Did you not like the part where Margot Robbie's dirty feet are on centre frame for 30 seconds?
I loved it. That movie is entirely just the premise of, like, telling a story about, like, actors and stuntmen in Hollywood and
the real
praising Hollywood and loving it.
Yeah. Or the part where, like, Quentin Tarantino's OC beats up Bruce Lee.
This stuntman just beats the crap out of Bruce Lee because, like, oh, hey, isn't it funny? And Bruce Lee definitely, like, never did anything and was a fake and a con, and it's like, fuck off.
Do you see as well, like, Bruce Lee's own family, like, they were complaining about that, and Quentin Tarantino, well, that's what I've heard. It's like, well, his family's saying it's not true.
And that was one of the prime examples of a movie I've watched recently where it was like, it just seemed like it was Hollywood jerking itself off. And I really enjoy Tarantino as a director a lot of the time, and again, the movie was made well, but I just was like, this is nothing. So to talk about the effects of the film.
Absolutely, one of my favourite aspects of filmmaking. Let's go.
The plan behind the scenes was to create an intriguing visual signature. To serve the subtleties of the script and to help personify death, production designer John Willett developed the concept of skewing the sets. So do you know much about this?
Yeah, so what they would do is they would build the sets, but then, like I said, they did it all practically, but they would make like these massive oversized or miniature sets that they would intersperse with actual footage to like add this sense of like uneasiness to a lot of scenes and to achieve the effects that they wanted of like things moving in realistic but sometimes slightly unbelievable ways. Like they would just tweak things ever so slightly, so it's like this representation of reality that's not quite accurate. It's like they'd mess about with stuff and like they make things bigger, make things smaller.
It says to achieve this mystique, Willett designed 2 versions of virtually every set.
Yep.
One version was used before the crash, and the other sets were used for the scenes after the jet explodes to create like that disposition of like, now death is on the chase.
Yeah, like just scenes where death is there. Things are they look to an uninformed viewer, all fine. But if you look a bit closer, there's just something that's not quite right about them. There's something that's not all the way there, and you can't place your finger on it.
Yeah, you've pretty much nailed it there. It says, like, on the skewed sets, I force the perspective either vertically or horizontally.
Yep.
Nothing is square. And although you can't put your finger on it, it just makes you feel like something is not quite right.
Yeah, so they're using like unnatural, not even unnatural, because like all fucking aspect ratio. Your eyes don't see in fucking 1080p or whatever. But it's not the usual language of film. So there's something about it that doesn't look quite right to the eye.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Well, that's what we talk about all the time, don't we? Like people taking advantage of the very medium itself to like get stuff across to the audience.
As well, not just utilising it through the whole film, utilising it specifically after the crash has happened, and therefore, like, something's not right in this world now. And that's the thing, is like, it's so annoying to hear, like, stuff of, like, behind the scenes about this, and, like, great concept, like, made really well, that, you know, then just turn around and just be like, it's a bit shit because it's horror, though.
Yep. And that's why I love horror so much, because I say it's such a creative genre. So, because I think the point I made like last time we talked about this, like probably earlier this month, is that the reason I love horror so much is that anything can be scary. Anything can be scary. And because of that, horror as a genre, people like, they think like scary movies, they think like slasher movies and all stuff, but that's not what horror is. Like, you know, we're talking about a movie now where the metaphysical concept of death is the antagonistic force.
Because like it's all you need is a simple reframing of like, yeah, okay, we all die eventually. And it's like, yeah, we will all die eventually because death is coming for us.
Yeah, that twist as well of death having a sense of humour. That is a genius addition to like the mythos of the series, that it's not just that death wants to get you. Because you can see in your head a worse version of this series. Where it's just people just like knives fly across, it's like a ghost. You can see it kind of. It's like a ghost movie where they'll be stood in their kitchen and a knife will fly across in the kitchen and hit them in the head. The fact that death has a sense of humour and wants to take people out in ironic, funny ways, of like, it wants them to, and it wants to make it like an accident, but it wants to be an accident that's so unbelievable, it makes the other people on the list feel nervous. That's what you have, isn't it? Like throughout the film, it's like, oh, 2 of the people have already died. It's like, well, why are you being paranoid? It's not like anyone's out to get you. It was an accident. And that's what and then like the paranoia of like, but it's not just an accident, someone's trying to get them. It's like, who's trying to get them? Death is. What do you mean death's trying to get them?
Yeah. And I can't remember whether they do this in every single movie. I do remember in like number 3, it was like they go through the pictures and there's like little noticeable like elements on the Polaroids marking which one's going to die in which order.
No, wait. Look, behind Stacy. That's Frank. This picture shows how he died.
This person's about to die. We don't know when or where, but like death is coming for them.
And one of the things that I like as well is like the chronology and the lore of the series has remained fairly consistent. Like they say, like you mentioned there, it's like, so the order you would have died before is the order that people generally die in after the accident. So like, I think in the first movie, it's like, okay, who was at the front of the plane?
Right.
Those people die first. But then later on, they decide, like, if you somehow survive, death skips you and goes to the next person. And they say that, and they keep going around and around. And, like, you know, after death gets to the end of the list, it'll come back to get you. And they have a guy say, like, well, I'm the safest motherfucker in the world because you've got to die first. Also, it might not be that death was killing you that way. It's like there's, I think there's one, I think it's the second one, where it's like they say, oh, a man with hooks is going to kill you.
Right.
And like the girl's in the elevator and she sees a man with hooks next to her. But because she's told, she runs away, gets stuck, and her head gets trapped in the elevator and she dies. And again, that's that thing there of like, did she die because you saw a sign? And that's like, again, death having a sense of humour of, I'm going to send you a sign, but then she's going to kill herself by panicking that she thinks she's going to die.
It's just, it just makes this franchise one of the more interesting franchises, I think, in modern horror films.
Yeah, it should be a TV series. Like there needs to be a TV series where just like every episode is like, they always have like those police procedurals where it's like, who's got murdered this week? So I want to see like another, like each season is another accident. And each
I was going to
episode...
say, yeah, you could very much just make it each season as an accident and those 10 people are going to die. I guess we can just round out then, talking effects wise. You mentioned the plane.
Yes, which I believe
it does here.
They built like not a full-size plane, but they built a full-size prop, which was pretty accurate.
The plane scene during which passengers die in midair was created on a very large soundstage.
I imagine it was loud as well.
Yeah, it probably was.
Probably pretty loud.
The 3-ton hydraulic gimbal was operated automatically. They say, we spent 2 months building this central set piece that weighs about £45,000 and holds 89 people. It was used for filming the onboarding sequences. It could be shifted on the gimbal to create a pitching movement of up to 45 degrees side to side, and also 60 degrees front to back. And yeah, just to try and convey the horror of like the engine failing and an airplane just, literally being torn apart and exploding.
It also just gives you the opportunity to film it from interesting angles, because it's like basically gives you access to that space.
Sauer said that the screams of the cast inside the gimbal made it appear more real. So there was just people inside there getting flung about, like genuinely just screaming.
Well, of course, yeah. And the thing, it's like it makes for a better performance because the actor isn't like, okay, pretend something bad's happening. It's like, okay, now we're going to flip this plane upside down.
Just the fact that they kicked off this horror series with a, actual care and love of the effects, and just not, can we fart something out that's going to create, like, get our budget back tenfold? It's like, no, can we really go to the effort of, like, recreating this giant airplane explosion and then going into all, a bunch of detail with, like, making 2 different versions of the sets and things like this. It's like they put so much effort into it.
So that's it, like a horror movie as well. Like you obviously do. Like the Saw movies now, they are a cash cow.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get ideas like this, where it's like just a first-time director or like first-time writer, like normally, even if it's not very good, the level of effort put in is usually quite high.
Yeah, it's a weird thing with horror films in general. Of just, it's, as you say earlier, like it's a very creative genre, but it's also like one of the least creative, with like 10 Saw films and 8 Paranormal Activities and stuff. And it's like you go through and it's like the aim for a lot of companies is like find the cash cow within, like, find the needle within the haystack.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of like loads of creative ideas in horror, but then obviously the idea is to then rip them off for like 10 sequels, and it's a shame.
Yeah. Well, even within those sequels, there can be a lot of like creativity. Like I said in the Final Destination franchise, where just they wanted the first one, great idea. Okay, now we've got more of a budget. Let's increase that spectacle. Let's create even more ridiculous Rube Goldberg-esque accidents that will befall people.
Yeah, and sometimes like upping the ante in a horror thriller film is like all you really need with a cool concept like that.
I will say that they probably blew their load right away though with the plane crash, because that's probably like one of the most like dramatic. Because I feel like, I guess it probably was maybe the easiest one to realise, but maybe the highway crash. The highway crash feels quite dramatic when the bridge collapses, but that's like really bad CGI. That's
the thing is like, yeah, how do you top a plane explosion? Is like, yeah, roller coaster crashing or a car pile up is like, a spectacle, but
cars crash every single day. Like the NASCAR one's kind of, it's like the entire stadium burns down.
Right, yeah.
And I do like how like the plane crash becomes like this key pivotal moment in the series where people always refer back to it if like something similar happened here. So they constantly refer back to that first movie of like, yeah, there's this this person thought he was crazy and everyone died.
And then everyone who didn't die died.
Yeah, and I would love to see as well like a prequel, because obviously the plane crash is the first movie. It's like, and I think the 5th one ends, or one of them ends with it's actually they get onto the plane that the first one started with, which I thought was really funny.
Oh,
yeah, one of them ends with, okay, we've all survived Final Destination. Let's get on a plane and go on holiday. And you see him get on, and you see the actors from the first movie walk onto the plane. And you're like, oh! It's so good! Because
that's a cool way to end one, yeah.
They all survive, and it's like, oh, thank God we survived. Let's go on holiday as bros. And then the people from the first movie get on the plane.
Oh,
because I think what they have is there's like a commotion at the back of the plane. And they're talking like, what the hell's going on? It's like they're trying to ruin our vacation, and then you see the actor from the first movie getting dragged off. And it's like, you know what? I don't mind that you did that for one movie.
Yeah, that's very clever. That's very cool.
But I would love to see a prequel, like, back in olden times. I want to see, like, in Roman times, where someone's about to get on, like, a chariot or something. They could do it.
They could. But yeah, that was Final Destination. And I hope everyone's just enjoyed us talking about the franchise and the film for a little bit. And as someone who, again, doesn't handle horror very well, I would recommend, like, at least giving them a shot.
That's the thing. They're not... they are scary, but I'd say they're more so than scary, they're uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, like, some of the scenes are really uncomfortable to watch, like, because they're very tense. That's why I'd rather to have them as thrillers. Like, the bit like, it's like, I think it's the first movie where it's the lady making coffee, and you just see, like, all the different parts of her kitchen. Because I remember there's an interview with the director, I think, when I watched, like, the making of the first one. They talk about that being one of the hardest scenes to film because it was such an ordinary, everyday situation, like a lady making a cup of coffee.
But there's also dangerous things in the kitchen everywhere.
Yeah, and they were like, how do we make someone making a cup of coffee scary? And they said, well, we're just going to zoom in on everything that could possibly go wrong. And, like, feedback they got after the fact is, like, obviously, yeah, people don't want to get, like, people are scared of planes exploding, but he just made people scared of their own houses.
You should be. I would just recommend people give it a shot.
Highly recommended, yeah. Like I said, just if you're not good at handling horror, just watch the making of stuff, because the making of stuff is also like very, very fun.
Yeah, thank you everyone, and hope you all have a lovely day.
Have a great Halloween.